I had been pet sitting for a family for a few years, taking care of their dog whenever they traveled. The house was in a quiet neighborhood, a little too quiet at times, but the pay was good and their Labrador Max was friendly. The family was leaving for 2 weeks, and I was all set to stay in their house and care for him. The first few nights were uneventful. I followed my usual routine: feed Max, take him for a walk, lock up the house, and settle into the guest bedroom. It wasn't until the 4th night that things started to feel off. Max began acting strange. He would stand in the hallway, ears perked, growling softly at nothing. He wasn't barking, just making low, uneasy noises. I chalked it up to him being in a mood. Maybe he missed his owners. That night, I woke up abruptly. The room felt colder than usual, and there was this distinct sound, like nails clicking on the hardwood floor. Max always slept in the master bedroom on his dog bed, but the sound was coming from the hallway, right outside my door. I called out to him, expecting to hear his collar jingle as he trotted in, but there was no sound at all, just silence. I sat up and reached for my phone. The clock read 3:12 a.m. I turned on the flashlight and aimed it at the slightly open door. Nothing. I called Max's name again. After a moment, I heard the familiar jingle of his collar coming from downstairs in the living room. That didn't make sense. He was never downstairs at night. I got up, hesitated, then slowly made my way down the stairs. Max was standing completely still in front of the glass patio doors, staring outside. His body was rigid, his fur slightly raised. I whispered his name, and he didn't turn. I followed his gaze out into the backyard. The porch light was on, casting a dim glow. At first, I didn't see anything, just the empty yard. But then I noticed something strange. The motion-activated garden lights flickered on, one by one, as if someone or something was moving through the yard. A chill ran down my spine. I didn't see anyone. No person, no animal. Just those lights activating, moving toward the house. Max let out a low growl, his muscles tensed. I instinctively reached for the door lock, making sure it was secure. Just as my fingers touched the latch, the outdoor security light at the farthest end of the yard turned on. My heart pounded. I grabbed Max's collar and slowly backed away from the door. I needed to check the security system, see if the cameras picked up anything. As I turned toward the hallway, my breath caught in my throat. The back door's handle was moving. Not just rattling in the wind, it was turning. Slowly, deliberately. Someone was trying to get in. Max erupted into a frenzy of barking, his deep, booming barks echoing through the house. I stumbled backward, reaching for my phone, my hands shaking. I dialed 911, barely able to form words as I told the dispatcher what was happening. The door handle stopped moving. Then a sound, a heavy, slow knock on the glass. 3 knocks. I couldn't breathe. I pressed myself against the wall, listening as Max continued to snarl at the door. The knocking came again, 3 times. Then silence. I stayed frozen, barely aware of the dispatcher still on the line. The minutes stretched endlessly until I finally heard the sirens in the distance. Red and blue lights filled the yard as 2 officers approached the house, flashlights scanning the area. By the time they got there, there was no sign of anyone. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. Just the security footage. Motion-activated lights flickering in a pattern as if someone had been walking toward the house. I didn't stay another night. I packed up my things, grabbed Max, and left. The family was shocked when I told them what happened, but they dismissed it as a prank or maybe just my imagination. But Max knew. For the rest of my time pet sitting for them, he never went near that back door again. And neither did I. I was pet sitting for a family who had a large German Shepherd named Toby. They lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where nothing ever seemed to happen. The house was cozy, with a big backyard and a tall wooden fence surrounding the property. It was supposed to be an easy gig: feed Toby, take him for walks, and stay overnight to keep him company. I had no idea what I was about to experience. The first few nights went by without a hitch. Toby was well behaved, though he had a habit of staring at the back door for long periods, his ears perked as if he were listening for something. I chalked it up to the usual dog behavior. Maybe he heard animals outside. On the 4th night, I was watching TV in the living room when I heard the sound of scratching at the back door. It wasn't frantic, just slow and deliberate, like someone running their nails along the wood. Toby was already sitting near the door, his body stiff, staring intently at it. My stomach tightened. I got up cautiously and turned on the porch light. Nothing. I tried to shake it off, assuming it must have been the wind or an animal, and went back to the couch. But then I heard it again, this time accompanied by the unmistakable sound of the door handle jiggling. My heart pounded. I grabbed Toby's collar and slowly backed away from the door. Every fiber of my being told me not to open it. Instead, I called the family who owned the house, whispering into the phone that someone was trying to get in. They assured me no one else should be there and told me to call the police immediately. As I dialed, the scratching stopped. By the time the police arrived, there was no one outside. They searched the backyard and found nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. Just the eerie silence of the night. They told me to stay inside, keep the doors locked, and call them if anything else happened. I barely slept that night. Toby lay at the foot of the bed, his body tense, occasionally letting out low growls. The next night, I debated whether I should stay at the house or leave. But I was stubborn, and I told myself I was just being paranoid. At around 2 a.m., I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water when I heard a noise coming from the basement. It sounded like someone shuffling around down there, dragging something across the floor. I froze, listening. Then, the basement door, which had been locked, creaked open. Toby launched himself toward the door, barking furiously. I grabbed the nearest kitchen knife and slowly backed away, my breathing shallow. I forced myself to peek into the basement. Nothing. The door was wide open, but the basement was pitch dark. I couldn't see anything, and I wasn't about to go down there to investigate. Instead, I slammed the door shut, locked it, and barricaded it with a chair. I called the police again. They arrived quickly and searched the house from top to bottom. Once again, they found nothing. But one of the officers noticed something disturbing. The lock on the basement door hadn't been broken. It had unlocked from the inside. That was enough for me. I packed up my things, took Toby with me, and left that night. The family later told me that weird things had happened in the house before. Objects moving on their own, strange noises at night, but they never thought much of it. They assumed it was just the house settling. I never went back. And to this day, I still wonder who or what was inside that house with me. I was pet sitting for a woman named Linda, who needed someone to watch her golden retriever Murphy while she was away for a long weekend. Her house was a charming, older home on the outskirts of town, surrounded by dense trees. It was peaceful and remote, almost too remote. The first day went smoothly. Murphy was a happy, well-behaved dog, and I spent most of the day playing with him in the backyard and exploring the property. Linda had warned me that the house was old and creaky, but nothing seemed too unusual. That night, after locking up and turning off the lights, I climbed into the guest bed. It wasn't long before I heard a noise from downstairs. A soft creaking, like someone stepping lightly across the wooden floor. My heart pounded. I grabbed my phone and checked the security cameras Linda had set up. Nothing. Just an empty living room. I told myself it was the house settling and forced myself to sleep. The second night was worse. Around 1 a.m., I woke to the sound of scratching. Long, deliberate scratches against the back door. Murphy, who had been sleeping beside my bed, suddenly lifted his head, his ears alert. He let out a low growl. I reached for my phone again and checked the cameras. But this time, I saw something. Something moving just beyond the edge of the porch. A shadow, shifting unnaturally in the dim light. I held my breath, watching as the figure seemed to retreat into the darkness. I debated whether to call the police, but without a clear threat, I hesitated. Instead, I locked every door and sat awake in bed, Murphy pressed against my side. On the final night, I almost convinced myself it had all been in my head. But then, something happened that I still can't explain. At exactly 2:33 a.m., I woke up to Murphy barking wildly, his body rigid as he stared at the bedroom door. I grabbed my phone to check the cameras, and my blood ran cold. The basement door was wide open. I hadn't opened it. I knew I had locked it. My hands trembled as I switched to the living room feed, and that's when I saw it. A figure, standing at the base of the basement stairs, not moving, just standing there. I couldn't make out any features, only a dark shape, hunched slightly as if watching something. Without thinking, I grabbed Murphy, my car keys, and bolted out the front door. I drove straight to a nearby gas station and called the police. When they arrived at the house, they found the basement door closed again, but the lock had been broken from the inside. Nothing was stolen. There was no sign of forced entry anywhere else in the house. Linda later told me that, years ago, a man had lived in the basement as a tenant. He had been evicted for unknown reasons, and soon after, strange things started happening in the house. Doors opening on their own, footsteps at night, and items being moved. She had assumed it was just an old house playing tricks on her. I never went back to that house, and to this day I wonder, did I see something supernatural that night? Or had someone been living in the walls, waiting?